Alright. Fugly. Fugly just swallowed a marshmallow. Right. Today's episode is solar flares, paranormal perception, and why China is fucking stupid. Okay. Not actually a solar physicist. Okay. But this physical body talking to you did do a unit on paranormal studies or parapsychology at university quite some time ago, and in that unit studied what are the consequences of perception on a person in one of the USSR countries who was outdoors during the largest solar flare in recorded history. Okay, so bit of background. A solar flare, if you don't know, is try to imagine the sun as a big ball of gas and plasma, and it does a bunch of weird, freaky sun shit. And usually it's mostly stable, but it goes through these cycles where it gets a bit overheated and its face gets a bit spotty. They call them sunspot cycles. And they've noticed there's some kind of correlation between when the face of the sun gets spotty and when the sun vomits. So if you imagine the sun as the solar system's alcoholic, which has gone out on the piss for about 10 or 11 years or so, and been wandering around the sun, overheating, dehydrated, and then get spots all over the face, and then chunders all over the solar system, then you basically get a rough analogy of what a solar flare is, okay? The sun chunders everywhere, and when it chunders plasma and particles and all kinds of supercharged energy things, and it's a great big fucking mess. If you're in the firing line of one of those things, you're a goner. An absolute fucking goner, okay? And those solar flares are so fucking deadly that even a mild one, without the magnetosphere, so we'll get to what the magnetosphere is in a minute. Without the magnetosphere, if the Earth was in the firing line of one of those chunders, okay, it is deadly spew, okay? It will kill everything and potentially dry up all the oceans as well. Okay, and every 11 years or so, or 12 years or so, the sun has a spew session, and the number of spews it has is unpredictable, and the intensity of the spews is unpredictable, and the frequencies of the spews is unpredictable, and the spew session usually lasts about 1 or 2 years. About 2 years. Fun times. It turns out in 2025 we're probably in the second year of said spew session. So one of the things that happen when the spew sessions occur, known as solar flares, is around equatorial regions there's an increase in cyclonic and tornado activity, or an increase in intensity. So solar flares don't actually cause cyclones and tornadoes, but they sure as shit have the ability to increase their intensity. There are situations where cyclones and tornadoes can be caused by solar flares. It's just more the point that they exist when there's not a solar flare as well. And are obviously seasonal. If you're from the equator, you would know it's usually around Christmas time. So, or roughly then. Um, the 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 other things that a solar flare can do, you can all Google all this stuff, but we'll go through it anyway because it's quite fascinating, is power outages, and among other things, knocking satellites and spaceships out of orbit. Okay? As you might imagine, if that's capable of literally destroying everything that is on our planet, a little tin can in the sky being knocked out of the way is and basically melting and turning into space debris really isn't that big a deal for it. So they have all kinds of weird maneuverings back to base control, satellites that measure when the solar flares are coming. Quick. There's 8 minutes between. Oh, we just saw one about to leave. There's 8 minutes. No, there isn't. You've still got less than 8 minutes because it takes 8 minutes for the signal to get back to Earth from the freaking satellite that's measuring it, right? Like, so they're in a fucking pickle and a half. It's quite frankly amazing at all that we even have telecommunications, given the circumstances. Most of the satellites are in lower geodesic orbit, which happens to coincide with a section of the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is not small. It is the outer edge of Earth's various and sundry bits and pieces. So, as you might imagine, when you walk around on the planet's surface, it feels pretty ordinary, and you might perceive the sky as blue and above your head. Well, the sky is not really blue. That's a refraction thing, apparently. But the point is the normal air that you're walking through, the stuff you're breathing in, okay, the atmosphere, and then that goes for fucking ages. And then there's the stratosphere, and that goes for a few more ages, like a long way. And then we're talking like, hundreds of kilometers by this point. And then you get to the outer edge of the stratosphere, and there you get to what's called the magnetosphere, and lower geodesic orbit is just all of it's really sort of like a range, okay? And the satellites, they have them in a wide distance, so most of them are within the magnetosphere, and some are at the outer edges of it. So when the spew happens in the great big chunder, the sun goes over everyone, okay, those satellites are partially shielded by the magnetosphere. Okay, let's see if the photovoltaic effect works. That was a fly, not the photovoltaic effect. Did something happen before, during the pause? Anyway, just pretending if light language was a photovoltaic effect. Anyway, the point is there was a situation where just confused words. There was a situation where the sun spew, wouldn't hit that magnetosphere, and see, the satellites being in the magnetosphere are partially shielded. That magnetosphere is caused by the Earth spinning. So the Earth spin on its axis produces a magnetic shield, and basically that magnetic shield is what's preventing everyone from being fried, completely and utterly fried. Not just from normal sunlight, which could fry you anyway, but if a sun spew happened, okay, apocalyptic would be an understatement, okay? Absolutely horrendous. It'd be horrendous. Okay, so that magnetosphere is fucking fantastic. Yay, Earth, keep spinning. Do you like Brinkley? Yay. Okay. So in 1989, the sun spewed. Okay, and it spewed so badly that since they started taking records, which was around the time of what they called the Carrington event, nearly 100 years earlier, roughly, it was the strongest solar flares and the most solar flares they had recorded out of any of the years. Absolutely mega. There's different classes of solar flares: C class, M class, and X class. X class, unsurprisingly, because they're like X for extra, is the real boom bastard ones. And there was an X class solar flare that knocked out the entire electricity grid of Canada, and the tornado season in Tornado Alley in the USA just was the amount of Category 5 tornadoes they had, the amount of serious cyclones they had was just extraordinary. And as any ufologist would know, 1989 was also the year that there was supposedly a shit ton more UFO sightings and abduction accounts than average. It was also the year that the USSR fell apart. These are not coincidences. Okay, so one of the theories that describe UFO's relationship to solar flares is called the Borealis. So some people had this idea. They said, when a solar flare hits the magnetosphere, it produces a different outcome at different parts of the shield. So obviously around the equator there's a bulge, and the effects it has on the weather is different. So you get the cyclones and the tornadoes. But at the poles, something different happens. You get the northern and southern lights, and they're absolutely fucking spectacular. And the absolutely marvelous things. And people who live near there, so we'll say within 20 degrees latitude of the North Pole in this case, because pretty much no one lives that close to the Antarctica. So North Pole is you really need to be concerned about here. So Russia, Poland, the Scandinavian countries, Siberia, Canada, okay, northern Canada. These are northern Germany, blah blah blah. You get Greenland and Iceland, obviously. These are all places that when the northern lights happen, can experience them. They're places that are reasonably close to the Arctic Circle. So someone had an idea. They said, you know what? Maybe they're not seeing UFOs. Maybe they're seeing the northern lights, and they're a little bit, confused, because let's face it, those are pretty spectacular, and it could be confusing. Well, actually, no. There's a even weirder idea out there, and this is the idea that came about as a consequence of research in 2008. This body did, when studying an experience that someone had who was from the USSR, and the event was in 1989. We will not disclose the details of what they went through or who they were, because of privacy. But never mind. The point is the idea is that this, when a solar flare happens, it's not a small event, okay? It can and does disrupt the ionic channels of the ionosphere. So you know, there's stratosphere, atmosphere, magnetosphere, there's also ionosphere. So to create those cyclones and tornadoes, the ions in the air change. They start going a bit excited, you know. They go, ooh, and then the other air particles go, ooh, and it starts going, oh, hot and cold fronts happen, oh, no, blah, 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 blah. And next thing you know, you get a cyclone, right? Or a tornado or whatever. Okay, so where there's shifts in those ionospheres, it means the ions are shifting, basically. And when there's ion shifting, if you know basic chemistry, you'd probably not, no offense if you don't, ions are what happens when an electron is shared by a different atom, basically. Cations and ions is the electron's in a different spot than it normally is. So the sort of electrical balance of the atoms have changed. That, of course, related to the magnetosphere, might produce a photovoltaic effect where you see the northern lights. So there you have that. What it also might do is that if you get into really sort of weird shit, given the amount of particle charge that happens at the time and enormous complexity that's associated with that, could create a dimensional rift. And a dimensional rift is really loose language to say that the structure of the reality at that spot changes. And when that happens, now we get into what's called multiversal theory. Okay? In multiversal theory, you can have a dimensional rift, which would open, if that was possible, could have a membrane between that rift and a different universe, or an exit point, usually a different universe, but technically as a portal-like event could be anywhere, but universe is the correct language. Cosmos, different cosmos, alternate reality, if you will. And that means that the membrane has opened in that story between two completely different cosmoses, with this membrane in the middle, and the rift is like that. Okay, so the membrane's there. There's the two universes. There's the membrane in the middle, called the interdimensional, or sometimes known as the interdimensional space. It's not interdimensional. It's actually a membrane, okay, for lack of a better word. And it doesn't really act like a membrane, but that's the word that's available, okay? And so the so-called interdimensional rift, right, it sort of like opens a little hole in that membrane, and that means things can get in and out. And it just so happens that in a universe adjacent to our own, there is believed by esotericists to be a group of aliens known as the Therian class aliens, which you know as the ones with the big dark eyes and the three fingers, which come in 5 different colours. There's the green ones, the blue ones, the tall grey ones, the short grey ones, which usually called Zeta Reticulans, and the white ones. And they come from a different universe, and they've passed through one of those membranes during an interdimensional rift that the sun's created, and that rift has pushed into their universe and then sucked them into the membrane. And what they've been doing, get this, What those beings have been doing for about 2 billion years is that they've been sitting inside that membrane, and whenever the sun punches a hole, or whenever a portal worker opens a portal there, okay, the exact same one ship, the one spaceship, there was only one spaceship that came through, passes out through into our universe and becomes either experienced as a spiritual event or a physical event, and there's only ever been the one ship. But because that ship actually is trapped in the membrane between the universes, it means that there is an infinite number of probabilities there. And as a consequence, the same ship can appear over and over again in slightly different versions to different people and behave differently each time. Okay. So, but there's actually just one ship, and there's only 100 of the Therians, and about 5 different versions of them. So this one spaceship trapped between the membranes of the universes has been popping out different portals, okay, in a state of, and it becomes bilocated, okay, as a consequence. So as a consequence of the paradox of that spaceship is still in its own universe, and it's in the membrane, and because it's in the membrane, it's in a state of probabilities, so it's actually at all possible exit and entry points and versions of the story thereof, and every single time our universe versus sun punches an interdimensional rift, it pops out. How's that for weird? And to make matters more fucking stupid, they took advantage of that with Crowley or whatever back in the 1910s. And when people started to figure out how to do what's called portal work, so there were people who were figuring out how to open and close portals, which is also an ancient form of spellcraft. Okay, it's a form of energy work. And working with the sort of like non-physical elements involved in that is more or less the same thing. Now, this is where you're going to get into a discussion about metaphysical, non-physical, and physical. Physical is obviously, this flesh here, okay? And that phone there. That's physical. Metaphysical is the byproduct of the physical. So the mathematical constructs or brainwaves that this physical body produces are metaphysical. Likewise, so are the electromagnetic waves that are a byproduct of that. So we'll get into later about a theory that describes like how memory and consciousness works. That's a theory that this one has. If Sam Bacon can think it's chronons when he's completely fucking wrong, we'll fucking school the fucking prick. Anyway, okay. So the interdimensional hypothesis is completely fucking wrong. Why? Because it's not interdimensional, it's actually multiversal, and it's a membrane between universes, okay? Not galaxies, universes. The membrane can also go to different galaxies or different points in the same galaxy or even different points in the same solar system, okay? Because it's an infinite number of probabilities. There is no singular probability there, okay? It's a state of potentiality, of probability. Okay, all possibilities exist there and have not actually happened. So the moment an event occurs to make a decision, that is the event that occurs. So because that's where the spaceship actually is in that space between the two universes, it means that it keeps appearing and reappearing. And so as a consequence, what people sometimes find with what they call the green aliens with the big eyes is they find a story of an alien that only has one copy of itself and yet somehow is able to be a spirit being that operates similar to a leprechaun yet is not a leprechaun, is definitely an alien without a spaceship, and moreover is able to bilocate and copy between one head and another. So one individual can be spirit possessed by, say, that type of green alien. And then what happens is that alien is capable of replicating, duplicating. So they don't actually reproduce sexually. They just copy like they're on a fucking Xerox. And then what they do is they jump heads and they act as though that where the copy came from was the offspring, when actually they are identical. And as a consequence, anyone that's affected by the green alien, okay, of which is one in a state of bilocation, okay, results in it being in a telepath, in what's called a telepathic like communication between them, as the alien talks to itself, but from the vantage point of multiple heads that have been, quote unquote, spirit possessed. Okay, right, but why does that sound completely crazy to you right now? Why is this going to the realm of science fiction? Well, here's why that's possible. Because that alien does not exist in our universe, but exists in the membrane between our universe and the other one. And because it's in that state of probability, if it can be in one head, it can be in another. If it moves through a portal and encounters that, okay, and you're able to encounter the non-physical spaces of the non-physical space and the metaphysical space, in other words, go to the membrane areas, then you might encounter what you call the spirits. So the spirits are not physical and they're not metaphysical, they're non-physical. You'll probably find that spirits are not light, spirits are not matter, okay, and spirits are not mass, nor are spirits artificial. What a spirit is a non-physical entity which has sentience. Everyone knows that spirits can and do bilocate. Not everyone involved in esotericism, that is. Everyone that's ever been exposed to esoteric ideas or parapsychological ideas will tell you straight up that bilocation is a fucking thing. That there have been many people who either experienced it, witnessed it, or claim to have witnessed it, or at least philosophically taken it into consideration. Okay, it's called bilocation. That means your mind can be in more than one body or more than one place simultaneously. As a consequence of that, things like clairvoyance, precognition, and remote viewing become possible, as well as telepathy. So these bilocation mirrors, as they call them, are nothing more than the acknowledgement that all beings are of the spiritual variety non-physical. So because they're non-physical, it means they're not from either universe, okay, nor are they from the membrane. What's actually happened is that because there was a sellout of humanity in about 1910, where they decided by the 1970s that we lived in an alien hierarchy, they decided that everyone was inside the fucking membrane. They decided that everyone was being controlled on that ship. And that was a big mistake, because it used to be the case before that there was a distinction. And there were protections put in place. So you can thank Thelema and Theosophy for trapping you between the worlds. But what you can also do is acknowledge that as spirit beings, you are in fact non-physical anyway. So you're outside the realms of time and space, which is, by the way, a construct to begin with. You are in fact independent of each other. No matter what they say or do, you are what you really are, not what they do to you or project upon you, regardless of what they say. So when you see that there, you can see also the possibility that in that membranal space between universes, there are different potentialities or portals where there's groups that some people call the archons, or some people call the jinn, or some people call the fae or the fairies, or all these different beings, the different portals from that. But there's only one spaceship in that membrane, and it's not planet Earth. And when you see different UFOs in the sky that you are absolutely certain are of alien or non-human origin, in other words, extraterrestrial, you know what they are? A different version of that one spaceship, each and every one of them. There is a reason why the Starseed movement portrays almost all the aliens exactly the same way, okay? Except for reptilians and Nordics or Pleiadians, they all have that big almond eye, three-fingered crap going on. Every last one of them. Because those people were scammed by the cults that trapped humanity on that spaceship between the membranes, called it a star tracker wheel system, called it a Tesseract system, called it Atlantis and Titan, okay, so that lush harvesting could occur by members of that group, and then the option they try to give you is what? To become a star seed, which means is one of those aliens gets to live as you, but there's only ever one of those aliens, and you will only ever get a copy. The consequence then becomes is that the whole star group operates. The whole starseed group of that one alien is all copies of the same one, and none of them are the original. And because of that, they are all acting as though they are clients connected up into a ring server. And that means that whatever's behind the control of that spaceship or the control of that system is therefore in control of those people. So some people then go and believe that that spaceship isn't real. It is in fact a military operation, and that's a computer that's lying to people. So there's some few theories out there, and we've just covered some of the esoteric ideas that exist. The point being, though, is regardless of whether or not that particular narrative is true, it is considered a definite thing in the mainstream scientists that there is such a thing as a multiverse, and that yes, they believe between two multiverses there's a membrane, and that yes, interdimensional rifts are possible, sometimes cause portals to absolutely get between the universes and travel. They don't know necessarily what the outcome would be, although it's been articulated to you quite well. So in 1989, when there was massive solar flares, kaboom goes the fucking portals, and goes copies of the fucking aliens and whatever other potentialities were there as well. So some people saw Zetas, and some people saw Andromedans, and some people saw Archons, and some people saw shadow beings, and so on and so forth, and ghosts and whatever else, okay? So that particular thing meant, of course, that there was more recipients of UFOs that year, and ghosts and stuff more generally, because there was more portals to open them up. Okay, so the other thing too is that a way that it affects perception is that just simply being bombarded by supercharged ionized particles is going to put you in a shit mood. So you might imagine that a whole bunch of people that were pissed off for a whole bunch of decades in the USSR were suddenly being bombarded from outer space by these ionized charged particles that just put them into this really kind of mood. And then they just started fucking rioting, and they started smashing walls down, and they went and dragged Ceausescu out of his castle and shot him, and they just went great guns at that, and the USSR went kaput. Okay? So, because people were again being supercharged with that. So, yeah. The short answer is solar flares are behind interdimensional rifts, which are open the portals which lead to the perception of non-physical beings perceived as spirits, which are merely bilocation mirrors for entities or genuine spirits that exist in other universes and may or may not be trapped in a membrane between worlds, partially as a consequence of Aleister Crowley's activities in approximately 1910, or as a consequence of independent events associated with the Sun, and Crowley was merely a recipient. Have a nice day.